Hey, welcome to Sane Bee, where we talk about some true crime and make some art. Today we are diving back into serial killer land. So you've been warned, this is probably going to get a little dark. My sister Anna wrote the script, and without further ado, let's get into it. Today we are going to look into a case that gained international attention not only by the crime itself, but the sentence given to the criminal. Today we are talking about Javed Iqbal, a serial killer from Pakistan. He has confessed to about 100 murders of young boys ages 6 to 16 during the years 1898 to 1999. Javed Iqbal was child 6 out of 8 and was born into a fairly wealthy family. So wealthy, in fact, that his father bought Javed his own villa for some reason. Javed, being the living definition of young and rich, started a steel casting business out of his home in 1978. He also lived with a few other boys and would keep teen boys around as his personal help. They would later become his accomplices in his new murder business. It's always so gross when someone is, I'm assuming an adult, has any minor working for them. Something about that is just so uncomfortable because you know, especially where this is going, like, they definitely were abused in some way, whether it was physical, but definitely emotional, especially if they were then later accomplices to his murders. He definitely had some type of emotional abuse. Like, that sucks. That makes it so much worse. Great. We're not even like 5 minutes in and it's already getting rough. In December 1999, Iqbal sent a letter to local police as well as the local newspaper editor confessing to the murder of 100 young boys in the span of 6 months. So he was like, oh, hey, police, I'm killing a bunch of people. Maybe you want to do something about that? They didn't even find the boys. So he makes the police's job easier by telling them what he did and how he did it. He just left out the part where he tells the police where they can find him. Spoiler, the police do end up finding him. A good question we all might have right now, though, is perhaps why exactly 100 boys? I did not think about that. Yeah, exactly 100. He had a reason. Can't wait to find out his reason. I feel like it's going to be terrible. In Iqbal's confession letter, he wrote about his previous arrest for sexually assaulting young boys. I called it. Just saying. He complained that he had been beaten up by police during questioning and he sought to take revenge. I'm just saying he probably deserved that. Yeah, anyone sexually assault, I am all about redemption and stuff. Even if you do bad things, there should be some way of redemption and some way back to living a healthy, normal life in society and being a functionally contributing member of society. But I have a personal vendetta against just rapists in general, but specifically pedophiles. I don't have any patience and I really don't have any sympathy. And I shouldn't feel bad. Should I feel bad? I don't know. But I don't. Good on the police, although apparently it kind of backfires, which is why you probably should, be not terrible. Even if the person is terrible, you shouldn't take action against that person by physically assaulting them, because then also aren't you just committing their crime? So it doesn't really help prevent it. It kind of just encourages them to continue if they do get out. But if it does happen, especially if it's by other inmates, it would be a terrible prison guard because I would just look the other way. Although I think they are usually in they're separated from the general population. I learned that from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I actually really like that character. If you know, you know. He ate people. I think he had kids, but I don't remember. But I liked him. My husband did not, but I did. I thought he was funny. And it was just fictional, so it was okay that I liked him. That's what I'm going to keep telling myself. And then you hear of people who actually have a love for the actual killers, like convicted serial killers get love letters. His mother tried to use money to get Javed out of it, but that didn't work. She died of a heart attack while he was still in custody, and he blamed the police for his mother's death. The police captured you, but it's because you did something terrible, so you were there for a reason. So if anybody's at fault, I mean, it's your own fault, you just got caught. Yep, same page. He's the one who committed the crime, though, so it was his fault that his mom died early, wasn't it? He resolved to make 100 mothers cry for their sons as his mother had for him. Not sure how a mother crying for her son who was arrested can be compared to a mother crying for her dead son, but I guess somewhere in his thought process, it made sense. It would kind of make sense if he was going after, like, the police's children. That's the only way that would make sense. But just causing more harm to people who weren't involved at all, like, that's just... And I know that's so common. They're like, oh, well, I was hurt by society. And, like, that's kind of serial killers things. That's their whole vibe. And most of the time they feel like they are the victim of some sort of society concept or whatever. Anyway, in the letter, he also said that he had planned to drown himself in the nearby Ravi River. But after an unsuccessful search of the river, police began Pakistan's biggest manhunt ever. Now it is time to look at his methods. In his confession letter, Iqbal said that he would lure young boys, mostly beggars and orphans, aged anywhere from 6 to 16. Yeah, that's so much worse. And I think we have done this. Every single serial killer that I have covered so far, they're always going after the poor, beggars, the orphan. Although if they're orphans, then how are you going to make their mom cry? Or maybe he didn't know that they were orphan and then he killed them and he was like, dang it. I gotta recount. He would talk to them and take their pictures for his killing spree yearbook, I guess, and make buddies with them. And then he would rape them, strangle them with his special strangling chain, dismembered them, and then he would dispose of the pieces in one of 2 vats of hydrochloric acid that he just had lying around. I mean, I guess maybe it's used in steel casting, so it wouldn't even be suspicious for him to have. I don't know about steel casting, but maybe that would be related. He kept very detailed records of his victims with their names, ages, and of course the pictures he took of them. When police went to his house to check if Javed's claims were true, they found that he was indeed telling the truth. There were bloodstains found on the walls and floor, as well as the 2 vats of acid the police had only heard from Iqbal's stories, complete with partially dissolved human remains. Gross. Javed was even so kind as to leave a note for them explaining that he purposely did not dispose of the remains for authorities to find. This is when the manhunt begins. Javed mentioned that he was going to drown himself, but they couldn't find him anywhere near the river, so police had to expand their search. They eventually met 2 teen boys who admitted that they were accomplices of Iqbal and had helped him in evading the police. They had been hiding out in a drainage culvert and a cave for the last month before they came clean and were arrested. The 2 boys were found guilty of being accomplices in the murders and led to the arrest of a 3rd accomplice. Soon after this, Javed Iqbal walked into the newspaper place. Dude, I don't know what to call it. The place where they make the newspapers. It was called Daily Jang, and proclaimed, "I am Javed Iqbal, killer of 100 children. I hate this world. I am not ashamed of my actions. And I am ready to die. I have no regrets. I killed 100 children. I could have killed 500. This was not the problem. Money wasn't the problem. But the pledge I had taken was of 100 children, and I never wanted to violate this." Wow. I mean, he was a man of his word. That word was of a murderer, so not a good one, but he still stuck to his goal, I guess. He requested for the case to be taken up with a judge rather than dealing with the police, who had a history of being not so nice. this might turn out to be a bad decision on his part. Going back to his accomplices for a second, and further validating Iqbal's request of a judge, within days of his arrest, one of the accomplices was supposedly tossed out the window. We don't know for sure who tossed him out, if it was himself or the police, but one minute he was inside and the next he was outside on the ground. Anyway, we can go back to Mr. Icky now. So he had confessed to his murders, right? And the police found pretty solid evidence, right? Well, it was around this time during his trial that he decided he wanted to plead innocent. Okay, dude. He said it didn't really count as murder because apparently some of the kids had been able to run away, and that's why there were no bodies found of those kids. Sir, you had pictures and clothes of all of your victims, and you're trying to say that they just ran away and that you were only able to actually keep 2? And those 2 were the ones found in the acid baths. So how did they end up in the acid? According to Iqbal's new, not-so-improved story, they had just slipped and fell into personal vats of acid. I mean, maybe it was the steel thing. I'll give him the benefit of, nah, he doesn't deserve that. He's just a freaking creep weirdo. You know why he really did. Even if it was potentially could be part of his steel casting, we all know why he had that. Anyway, despite his best attempts as well as the attempts of his super useful defense attorney, the judge decided this guy was guilty of all 100 murders. This judge decided when he woke up that day that he was going to give out the most questionable death sentence ever. Judge Ala Bakish Ranj. I'm so sorry. Let me try again. Judge Ala Baksh Ranj. Go with that. I apologize. He claimed that according to Islamic law, it was only fair that Iqbal pay for his crimes in the same way his victims died. So he would be strangled 100 times with his own special strangling chain, and then he would be cut up into 100 pieces and dropped into hydrochloric acid, creating the nastiest soup ever. By the way, this whole execution would take place in the town square in front of everyone. Is it bad if I agree with the judge? It's only fair, right? An eye for an eye, although we don't live by those because that's a terrible way to live. I mean, I can't really blame him, although putting it out in front of everyone, like, nobody wants to see that. I mean, some people might want to see that, but I don't want to see that. I don't want to see a guy be strangled and then cut up and dropped into acid. That's so gross. And then what do you do with it afterwards? Like, no. What do you do? Do you just, no. However, Interior Minister, Moinuddin Haider was against this insane sentence. He stated that Pakistan is part of the Human Rights Commission, so this whole human soup thing was a no-go. The new plan was to hang Iqbal behind closed doors and then dispose of his body as they usually did after executions. Unfortunately, before any execution could be held, Javed and one of his accomplices had held their own execution, maybe. Their bodies were found in their cells one morning, dead. Apparently, the guard that was supposed to keep an eye on them had fallen asleep or something, and when he woke up, he found the bodies hanging from the barred windows with a sheet. So he did what any other half-asleep person who didn't want the responsibility of having a serial killer dead before his execution date would do. He took the bodies down and tucked them back into bed to be someone else's problem. He was fired. From a first glance, it looked like suicide, but autopsies found signs of foul play. But of course, it was ruled as a suicide. And just like that, that was the end of Javed Iqbal. And that's it for today's video. It did get a little gross and dark, but hopefully you were still entertained. And I hope to see you here next week. And I hope that you stay curious and creative. Peace. If you want, you can go ahead and subscribe.